Everything Everywhere All at Once had the most nominations from the Academy Awards this week, and we finally put our eye on it after all these months. Good timing. We'll also talk about the second episode of the HBO show The Last of Us. Those are the two topics, some other conversations happening today on Taking It Down.
Alabama Take Projection.
And here they are, our friendly host. This guy will make the music as best he can. It's up to you if you want to fucks with it. It's Adam Morrow of Speckled Bird.
Technically true of all musicians.
Yeah, but come on. It's you. I just wanted to say fucks with it in a very weird context.
I figured.
Also with us, he's working on his screenplay, Nothing, Nowhere, Never at All. It's Mr. Donovan Ronwald.
Thanks for having me, Blaine.
Our buddy, our pal, our good friend Natalie Morrow is not with us. Not this week. We'll catch her next week, I think.
It's a lesser experience because of it.
100%. Saturday brought the sudden news of the passing of Tom Verlaine, who once fronted the New York City band Television. Adam, I feel like you had some sincere reflections on his music. Do you want to just say a quick bit about his influence on you?
I think anybody who plays guitar in a certain form of indie rock probably can trace, if they're aware of it, can trace back to him. Of course, he had influences as well. But for somebody to be in the Lower East Side punk scene and put out records that had like extended guitar soloing on them and everybody to think it's cool, you've truly done something. He was one of a kind, and I saw a funny tweet that said, Television ran so that your favorite indie band from 2008 could walk. And I thought, yeah, that's about right. He's getting a lot of praise as a guitar player, and rightfully so, but, as part of a musical outfit that kind of broke the mold and I think had really great lyrics, and I enjoyed his singing too. I was kind of reflecting on, just something as simple as the chorus of the song Days. Are they the best singers in the world? No. Is it the most complicated chorus to just say a single word over and over again? Possibly not, but it still affects me in a way that a lot of better singers with more words in their songs, it's more meaningful to me than that. So I don't know. And now all these cool stories keep coming out about, like, he would apparently be at the Strand bookshop every morning going through their dollar table, seeing what was on offer. Just endeared himself in so many ways.
He was only 73.
I guess it's pretty good for a rock star who came up through the CBGB scene, and I don't really know his biography well enough to know where he was at with all of that, but 73 in rock and roll years is pretty good.
It always makes me chuckle that they got lumped in with punk. They just don't sound punk to me.
They don't. I mean,
just because they have a 10-minute long song.
Maybe the attitude is a bit more punk. I don't know. Like the stripping everything down, but still, I don't know. I feel like there's a strong chance that Verlaine had some Grateful Dead records stashed somewhere in his apartment, out of view. And then to think about everybody that he influenced, from the obvious, like Thurston Moore making posts about it being an honor to get to hang out with him. Dean Wareham of Galaxy 500 and Luna fame posted a picture of the two of them together. But even, Blaine in that Bono book that we read, they mentioned that a big selling point, I think, on Eno was the fact that he had done this legendary lost record with Television, and they love Television. It's just pretty amazing. It's almost like the Velvet Underground. They are to, like, musicians what the Velvet Underground was to culture. Like the old joke of, like, only 1,000 people bought the first Velvet Underground record when it came out, but they all started bands or did something. Television's like kind of the next level of, like, they're like the band's band, like a writer's writer or a coach's coach, that whole idea. And I know they were widely popular, but still, that's like the blueprint for so much of what's happening now.
The rock star Tom Verlaine passed away Saturday at the age of 73. So definitely will be missed. So with that, we'll get into our first planned discussion on Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's now streaming on Showtime. I'm honestly not sure how long it's been streaming, because it hit Showtime without any fanfare for a film with so much praise.
Hey, it's back in theaters, too.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's showing at my local theater, which I didn't know before I watched it on Showtime.
It's not a surprise. Usually when those movies get nominated for an Oscar, or especially Best Picture, they'll drop them back in the theater. But Showtime's sort of dropping the ball there. The film was written and directed by Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert and stars Michelle Yeoh, Kei Hyun Quan, who, yes, that was the sidekick to Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom. He's all grown up now. The plot's about a rupture in time and parallel universes and kind of an effort to stop that. As we always say, I always say it, I try to see movies knowing very little other than maybe I want to see it. So, without spoilers, what did everybody think? Is it worth seeing? Is it a good movie? Sometimes those are two different ideas. Is it worth seeing? Is it a good movie? So, Donovan?
There are two different universes. One where I hated this film, and one where I thought it was pretty darn good. Which universe are we in?
I'm betting the one you thought is pretty darn good.
I actually did think it was pretty darn good.
Yeah.
It parts of it get a little creaky, and I'm not sure it completely holds up under its own weight, but it's obviously having a lot of fun. The actors are having a lot of fun without giving anything away. The fact that even though it's about jumping through different universes and different versions of yourself, the fact that it's basically a small family drama at heart really helps it out. And it doesn't hurt that it's got a great cast.
Much like James Carville said in Old School, I have nothing to add. That was perfect. I'm with Donovan. It maybe went on a little bit long for me and creaky under its own weight. I mean, I really can't say more than that. I thought the cast was really great. I'm with you, Donovan, on trying to figure out. There are movies that ask like really big questions, and we can maybe get into spoiler territory before we discuss all that. But they propose a lot of questions that then get answered in a less than satisfying way relative to the way that they were posed, if that makes sense.
It's like the Lost problem.
Yeah.
You have all this fun setting it up, but then the payoff is super disappointing.
And the payoff was still interesting and moving, but it's almost like me being disappointed by the way that True Detective season 1 ended, just because it had grown to this massive black hole of possibility in my mind, and any ending was going to be not that satisfying. And I'm not comparing; these are not on the same level to me, but it kind of did the same thing.
You guys are make quick comparisons to True Detective season 1 and to Lost a little, but I think it was much better handled than either of those. My quick spoiler-free thought was it was too much of a movie, but still really great. Let's draw a spoiler line there so we can talk about why. So if you haven't seen it, go to Showtime or go to your theater if they're playing it. Because I do think it was 100% good from start to finish. As an entertainment value, it was just great, fantastic. As a movie that wanted to ask some really introspective things, it was okay. It was pretty good. And that's my stance. I'm not talking for Adam or Donovan. So we're going to get into Adam and Donovan's thoughts and why. Spoilers now. We talk about so many ideas this had, and I'll bring up a lot of the ideas that I loved throughout our conversation. One of those is that each one of ourselves, even inside of us right now, we all have these multiple personalities, for lack of a better word. Like, I have a different personality when I'm a teacher than when I do when I'm in front of you, than when I do than when I'm with my kid, et cetera, et cetera. This is a notion brought up in all sorts of art. It's in To Kill a Mockingbird really well with the cook Calpurnia when she goes to church. We have these different versions of ourselves, but each one has something excellent to offer. I thought it did a good job with that idea, though it did drop it a little, but I think it was still a good idea. The rejection of fighting with family who may be different and just try to understand them was one of its better ideas with this version of you that still has something good in you.
I'm going to go completely on a left turn.
Do it.
With what you said. I've seen some reviews calling this like a love letter to genre movies, and I did kind of love that aspect of it, how it went from everything from like an emotionally gripping, like they meet at the theater and there's a what could have been moment to was it Racanui?
Yeah,
Ratatouille with the raccoon.
It was funny.
That was actually good payoff. But I loved like that aspect of it was great too. And the only thing I didn't love, so I'm gonna say I loved it, but then I think it was about 15 minutes too much of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. The ending especially, it was at the moment of full bombardment, big ideas for a long time. And it kind of got a little exhausting, I thought. I'm with you on the genre love letters, it turning, because I'm like Blaine, knew that I wanted to watch it and so tried to learn as little about it as possible. And when it took like a kung fu action movie turn, I was like, okay, here we go. This is fun.
Yeah.
And even
Lots of fun.
every beat had some comedy to it, like her being told, discovering that she's creating other parallel universes with every decision or lack of decision that she makes, and she's told that she's the key because she's the least successful one out of all of them. Like it was funny the way that it was explained to her. It's like you're the most complete failure out of all of them, so therefore you have the most potential. There was some parts that were, everything from like fighting with dildos to that was just like funny on all fronts.
Okay, I've got a nitpicky question. Is it not timelines? Like, I don't know if I agree with the use of the word universes in this. Aren't universes like star-related galaxies, something, and like millions of light years away? And like, what they're really talking about is a different timeline? Do different universes exist?
I think you're basically describing the same thing, Blaine. Although, quantum physicists have put forth that as a possibility that explains some weird stuff in quantum mechanics, that there are, in fact, branching universes, and that every decision you make or don't make, or every decision that is made, branches out to another universe. It has something to do with an experiment where light shines through a hole, and I can't describe it more than that.
Whoa, I need to read up on this.
So look it up. Whatever I'm babbling about.
As a function of the movie too, it was kind of funny that it's just like, just accept it, like even the illustration of like how it worked was very, like the visual representation on the phone was very cartoony, and the headsets they were all wearing, all that stuff, and by the end you're like, okay, there's the alpha verse and then there's everything else, so you were able to track it a little bit more.
It was a good play of words naming her Evelyn, the main character.
Was it?
Yeah, I thought so. Evelyn, everything. I thought that there was a bit of a sly play with the sound of words there. Some heavy mother-daughter shit from two dudes.
Yeah.
I found that to be kind of complimentary for them.
Both of the actors pulled it off really well. I'm thinking about the final confrontation by the car, where the daughter kind of spills her soul. And Michelle Yeoh's character bears her soul too. And they're both really play it as something really ugly and raw and vulnerable. And I thought that was really great. That's kind of what I meant when I said I think it stuck the emotional core of it by being a small family drama. It kind of doesn't have to answer those big questions. Or isn't interested in answering those big questions. Some of them.
I would agree there that it wasn't, when I say it asked questions it didn't answer, I don't think it was interested in answering them. Like what you're saying is it kind of kept it small on purpose. So that wasn't like a fault of the film. It's just there's a lot of intrigue on the table and they chose be kind and love your family as the answer, which is, a fine answer, I guess.
I will reward the movie plenty of praise for just those two. If you distill it down to be kind and be nice to family, I thought that was pretty good for the action that was all in between. The film lays out its biggest set of premises, I think, when the two primary characters are rocks, the mother and daughter are rocks, and it's the universe where humans never existed. First of all, I'm glad they mentioned that. But I'm the same way with books. I think that really perfect works of art don't mess with their big ideas being on the page or on the screen, and instead have it as an undercurrent throughout. And that is high level writing and very hard to do. But I like that scene being there because of the address of it's just by chance we exist.
That was a very if you ever read the comic Watchmen, it made me think of Dr. Manhattan when he's like, what is the purpose of life? It's all random chances. It's kind of cool and interesting to have characters who are experiencing all those random chances and thinking about what that would do to you. It certainly wouldn't make you a stable, mature, solid psyche.
The overload was very believable and very earned. You know, them, both the mother and daughter hitting that place where they're just everything everywhere all at once is, you know. And the rock thing, I'm with you, Blaine. That was, and again, the humor that was dealing in at the time, you know, asking the big questions, but also, you know, they're together and having kind of a goofy moment. I don't know, I thought that was a good, even when they're discussing, like, you know, everything's random chance and there's no meaning, blah, blah, blah. They're still, like, connecting with each other, which was kind of the whole point.
My very high school take on existentialism, but basically, like, you make your own meaning.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair.
I thought another strength of this movie was, and I mentioned it before, but just the supporting cast, especially, I can't say his name. I'm sorry. The guy who plays Waymond. Ke Huy Quan.
Quan is his last name for sure, yes.
Yeah. He goes from being, you know, he has to go from being like this kind of nice, befuddled dude that you feel a little sorry for to like, to like a ninja warrior. Back to that basically same nice person, but, you know, who's giving like the central message. He gave the central message of the movie.
Yeah.
And that was great. And then, of course, as like the complete counterpoint to that, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, who was at points anything but kind, and she was obviously having a blast.
Unrecognizable almost, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Absolutely.
There. But Quan won the Golden Globe for Best Actor, or maybe Best Supporting Actor. Apologies if I got that wrong. And Michelle Yeoh is nominated for Best Actress. And the movie has 11 Academy Awards, which are going to be coming in a couple of months. Interesting to see, you know, how much it'll win out of those nominations. I'm going to put on my Homer's dad yelling at the clouds meme. You can drop that meme right here. So I think my gripe is not fair, and it's not about the movie, really. It's about the culture we're living in that accepts this movie as a possible Academy Award winner. It feels like the result of when the Rick and Morty generation get to make movies that don't sacrifice intelligence, and I'm talking about emotional intelligence and academic. Like, that's still intact in the movie, but they get a chance to still insert the forms of entertainment they had growing up, like, oh, we have to include timelines and universes, and instead of an introspective drama, we have to have action where everyone's a superhero for a few minutes, but there's still real pathos to the character who are trying to save the world. Like, there's that family drama that Donovan mentioned, this indie family drama in here that could be especially existential and boundless in a dry, dramatic way, but they have to insert all these wacky things. And maybe I'm stripping the movie of its originality if you do that, but if this ends up being the greatest movie ever of 2022, does that also mean we've stripped ourselves of reverence for another sort of art form that can tackle the same themes without physically tackling in the movie? You know what I mean? Can they take the medicine without the sugar, is what I'm saying.
I assume that it will be in competition with things like Banshees and Bardo, right? I mean, Banshees is that.
Yes.
So
to address your larger concern, yes, Blaine, Oscar bait movies will still exist.
Yeah.
That's not going away.
Yeah. It's just, I think I'm addressing a particular, and not even like fans of the movie, which I think all three of us are going to be in the end when we wrap this segment. We'll say so as much. It's a particular subset of culture that are the memification of our art, maybe.
We talk about something like, we talk about this, or it's being talked about in the same breath of Banshees and Inisherin, but in a way, Banshees kind of does the same thing, where it takes its premise and it turns it up to 11. Mm-hmm. When he starts chopping his fingers off and throwing them at the door.
Spoiler alert for Banshees.
Yeah, sorry. I think that's in the trailer. That's kind of doing its thing up to 11, and everything, everywhere, all, can you say about Banshees, like, if it had just been like a dry domestic drama without the outsized characters and personalities and humor would I still have been interested? And would the big ideas have landed as well as they did?
Maybe. We're pretty open to almost any kind of movie, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Adam and I watched Blonde.
There's some time I won't ever get back. Still mad about that. I thought the all the action and maybe the memification that you're talking about was very self-aware this time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
So it was more okay with me. It was kind of like them saying, we're going to take... Because I would watch the heck out of like an indie drama with the exact same first, 25 minutes before she has the assault in the IRS office, and things kind of take a turn. Well, I guess she knows before that things are about to take a turn, but I would totally watch that film and be super into it, because I mean, we haven't even gotten into kind of the nuanced way that they're presenting an immigrant's story again, that we kind of talked about that with Bardo, that it's not central, but it's also defining,
Exactly.
like it's in the background, not even the background, it is a huge part of the movie, even though it's not explicitly addressing it constantly. I think it's using all of these flourishes to make its point.
Yeah. The immigration idea is definitely put on the screen, without a doubt. I did love how it made me consider how different paths of my life, or anyone's life, that can branch out. It had me, in the middle of the movie, it had me wondering what would have happened if I would have, bigger decisions, not gone to college or whatever, take your pick.
I thought it was kind of a fun meta joke on like what actors are too.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean?
Well, like it was cute, right? Maybe all it is cute, but she's playing all these different people from different lives, and it's basically what actors do is like she's playing like past versions of herself at some points, like the martial artist, and I think they actually even show like when she in the one where she's famous, they have a like brief clip of Crazy Rich Asians. And it's it's kind of like actors are kind of playing the what if versions all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was a good kind of meta joke on like acting and what actors.
Well, even
are.
the way that part one ended is a nod to that, right? That
yeah.
They pull out on It Goes to Black and has directed by and produced by, and then you're right back in the movie itself.
I don't know if the film has its sincere sweetness without it being also a immigration story.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe that was just both Quan and Yo being excellent at what they were doing. It could be a mixture of both.
What helped the story, and this doesn't necessarily have to be an immigrant story, but I think an immigrant story plays really well into it, is the way that we're led to understand Evelyn sacrificed everything for Joy and is still willing to do that so that Joy will have a better life than she had.
And there it is again. They did some really purposeful things throughout, probably from start to finish. The Daniels did. And you said it there, brought it to light. She sacrificed everything for Joy, for the daughter Joy. See, they
Yes.
picked those names, I think. There's a difference between themes and motifs, and I really dug the motifs. These repeated types of things, the circle motif, the eyes, family, the eternity, new year, new starts, change, repetition. But one of my favorites, I think, was the bagel and the googly eyes are like yin and yang of each other almost. If you look at them closely enough, that was really cool.
Yeah, like they're both silly. They're both nonsense, but one is silly nonsense and one is nihilism.
Exactly.
Yeah, the googly eyes is the opposite of nihilism.
Yeah.
When you really think about like why that's funny and why somebody would go through the effort of putting them places.
It speaks to a point you made, Adam, about how like just about every scene has something funny in it. Because like even a really serious scene, like when she grabs the baseball bat and starts breaking windows, is lightened by the googly eyes on the bat.
I mean, in a way, we talked about how this was an indie drama packed with action. Why can't more comic book movies be an indie drama packed inside of them. I mean, you put a cape on Evelyn Yeoh, and she's take your pick. She's Wonder Woman or whomever, whatever. I know that doesn't fit, yes, but
I'm going to look up how much this movie made versus how much any average Marvel movie made and assume that's the reason.
This is like the classic debate when you're talking about bands who jam versus jam bands, right? Like, how do you, even if they're like one is on 49 and one's on 51, right? It has to go to one side of that mountain. It's the same thing, because I thought about this a lot, like...
You thought about the bands thing, or you thought about the superhero?
I thought about the bands thing a lot, but specifically
okay.
because at moments this is like this slick is not the right word, but it looked really good. Action movie.
They look great. Maybe one too many slow motion moments.
I'm aware the whole time that it's inside of a drama more than it's an action movie with drama. You know what I mean? And like how we know how to classify those things as we're consuming them is interesting to me.
Maybe part of it, Blaine, is that comic book movies just aren't interested in being risky. Like, I kind of led with the joke about the two universes, but there's a universe where this movie is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's juggling a ton of balls.
Yeah.
And it does drop. I mean, it drops some of them, but it mostly pulls it off. And I think comic book movies would rather throw its one beach ball up in the air and catch it again.
Yeah, there's a universe where this is Swiss Army Man rather than everything everywhere all at once.
Did you ever see that?
No, I've seen enough reviews to avoid it when it was in the theater, so I never got around to it.
I mean, it seems like a real turning point for Daniel Radcliffe.
The final act is definitely seeded early, but it does carry the notion of stopping intergenerational trauma and biases and homophobia. So maybe problems repeat via generations. The idea is to stop them. Be kind, love your family, stop your problems from going to the next kid.
I thought there was also, it had a lot of moving points once you accepted that it was going to be way more personal size than existential, when he tells her in the movie star version, sitting around and doing taxes with you sounds pretty good.
Yeah, very sweet moment.
It was very sweet in that, Donovan, you talked about it being genre love letters. I kind of wondered if it was almost going to go Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind there, where no matter what, they were going to find each other. They couldn't help but be attached in some way. And it didn't fully veer into that, but it did veer into taking that beyond just love story and like validating her existence. It was not only about cutting off trauma, between generations. It was what you're doing right now, where you are, is valid and has meaning.
Fantastic.
Telling that to somebody who runs a laundromat versus who has seen that she could have been all these other things would be, and she believes it by the end, convincingly. I thought that was really nice. And again, going back to the, y'all talked about the immigrant story being sacrificing so that your kids can have better. To me, it elevates beyond that. It's like, no, your life has meaning. It's not just transactional for this manifest destiny American bullshit.
And that's beautiful. What a good ending point there. Actually, we'll end with this. Life started because some chemical just so happened to mix with some other chemical in some ooze.
And lucky for us, those chemicals were horny.
Exactly.
Now, this was 6,000 years ago, right?
It was 2,000. 2,000. Oh. No, so is life pointless, or does it have a point? Donovan, you're up.
I went to church this morning, so I guess I have to land into life has a point. But it's awfully hard to see sometimes, right? Like, there's this notion in theology that, like, the Holocaust changed God, for example, because you have to deal with a God who lets the Holocaust happen. So that's my answer.
Yeah. Deep stuff. Let's take a break, and on the other side, we're going to talk about the second episode of The Last of Us on HBO. So, guys, Friday was the release date of the 17th set of records in Bob Dylan's famous Bootleg Series, and this set was focused solely on one album, 1997's Time Out of Mind. Did either of you hear any of the most recent Bootleg series, or even have opinions or a relationship with that particular album they're exploring?
Are you talking about 1997's Daniel Lanois produced Bob Dylan record, Time Out of Mind? I have no opinions on Daniel Lanois.
It's one of those Bob Dylan records that you cannot mention without mentioning who produced it. And Daniel Lanois produced "Oh Mercy" in 1989, and similar vibe, but "Time Out of Mind" is definitely more fully realized, probably because of the songs. The songwriting was a little better.
You ever
But-
read Lanois' book?
No,
And he
No,
talks
I
about
haven't.
how they like crafted, because he tries to craft a bunch of stuff for an artist, depending on the situation, before the artist is there. And they talked about, I think this is in the book or maybe in subsequent interviews, him and this other guy played rhythm tracks to like really old blues 78s. And then they took those and then played to those and then showed that stuff to Bobby, who then incorporated it. I thought that was so fascinating. And that guy is,
it really
Daniel
is.
Lanois is like this is my guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything he touches turns to gold.
They did all that prior to like prior to like even talking with Bob Dylan about like what you want a song to be. Like they prepared all this stuff already.
He would,
I think he had some demos.
yeah.
Okay, that's still wild.
It's the idea of pre-production, trying to have, Lanois and Eno, when they were a team, I think they would make a point of having something, even if the band was coming in to work on something specific, having something every day to try to get their minds firing,
Okay.
a soundscape, a rhythm, something like that. So
Yeah.
this is obviously you've picked it something good here that's a long way to say no. I haven't listened to the the new stuff yet, but I will be.
This is the first time on Dylan's Bootleg series that they put the whole album out with it remixed, not remastered. I don't give a shit about remastering much unless it improves the sound some, but remixing always interests me because suddenly you have a particular guitar dropped out of the mix or turned up, or the drums are a little different. And they do all that kind of stuff with the remix, and it's very interesting. It sounds much more in the studio with them, sitting beside them, and it's a good remix. They say this in the liner notes, which are very long and extensive, that they wanted to do a remix not to take away from the initial album, but to kind of show you, hey, this is an impressive album. And here's the remix to kind of give you a little bit of a stripped down version to kind of see what they did with it. Probably mostly Lanois. And I'm sure, Dylan had the yes and no's, right? He do that, don't do that. The famous story I remember from this era was that Dylan would take the tapes at the end of the day and put them in the trunk of his car and drive off.
So the Lanois wouldn't mess with him while he was gone?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
The sides of their relationship are very interesting to me. I mean, I think one of the best chapters in Bob's book is about being in New Orleans and working with Lanois. And, Lanois has his takes on this whole relationship. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Mississippi, the song that eventually came out on the next album, Love and Theft, it was so hyped. I think Sheryl Crow put out a version of it before Bob even did. And it's a pretty decent version. It's just a rock up tempo country-ish version. And it gave you an idea of like, God, I want to hear Dylan's version. And Dylan said that Lanois came in and tried to make it too rhythmic.
Yeah.
And he didn't want it to be rhythmic. But there are some versions of Mississippi on this Bootleg series that I haven't gotten around to. I just listened to the remixed album from start to finish, and it's so complimentary to the original, as well as standing alone as a album unto itself. So if you're thinking about buying the Bootleg series and throwing away your old copy of Time Out of Mind, don't do that because they're really distinct.
I hope that there is a CD I'm sure there's like a box set, right, of this.
Mm-hmm.
Any of them, is the cover Larry Campbell staring at Soy Bomb? I hope so.
God, what a great period. Larry's in the booklet. I flipped through. Yeah,
Nice.
Larry's in there.
So he didn't play on the record. He was just on the tour, right?
Now, he might be on some of the tracks from the Bootleg series.
Okay. He didn't make
Because-
the actual record. I think he came in right afterwards.
What's the famous
think.
drummer's name? Brian Blade?
Brian Blade.
He's on all over this album, this bootleg series.
That's
He's all over it.
If Lanois is there after a certain point, there's a good chance that the Blade brother's also going to be there.
Yep. Good album. Probably, I still think that's probably my favorite Dylan album, just because of my personal experience with it. Rough time in my life, and it just landed on me. So, let's get into some of our next segment. Due to our recording schedule, we're sadly always a week behind on the big Sunday shows, especially if it's an HBO hot weekly entry. That's usually the case, right? That means we're talking about the second episode of The Last of Us, though you may have seen the third episode already. So we got Last of Us, Pedro Pascal as Joel, Bella Ramsey as Ellie, the young lady, and Anna Torv as Tess. Spoilers for it immediately, because we're just going to jump right into it. It's called Infected, and here we go. You know, there's nothing technically wrong with the show at all, in the least. But it is so, 2 episodes in, it is so straightforward that I'm wondering what's the point. It's still a thrill and fun, and I'm going to watch it every week. It's just that the chatter it's garnering online is just a lot of people orgasming over it being like a video game. And so, like, what? I don't give a shit. Even if I did play the video game, I wouldn't give a shit.
I have been surprised at people loving this quite as much as they do. Like, I think it's good, but it's also kind of just a zombie movie so far.
Exactly.
Yeah, I felt like this episode did everything well that the first episode did well. Mm-hmm. But you're right, like, we didn't see anything new, and I'm thinking from the scenes from next week episode that the one that we're episode 3 might be that detour where they introduce the Nick Offerman character, and I think it was in the Vulture pre-review that they said that was the best episode of the series.
Oh, wow.
I think it was in Vulture. I'm not sure, or it was Vulture's.
I'll say it's a credit to the show, perhaps, that one, it goes by really fast. Like, I looked down when the episode was ending, I was like, oh wow, that time did actually all go by. But I forgot that Offerman was lurking in the distance, you know. Mm-hmm. So when he came on the next week on, I was like, oh, okay, there's something to look forward to, because if we didn't know that, and maybe they even cut that trailer because they knew that we'd kind of be thinking they're just wandering a hellscape and running from zombies, and somebody has to sacrifice them. We've seen all these beats before, you know. Mm-hmm. And while it's very good and very, very well done, and the acting is such that I'm still in, even though I know these beats, I don't know how they'd extend that over a whole season, and now 2, because, you know, the news came out this week that there will be a season 2.
Yeah, I think they only have 2 seasons planned. I think that's the idea.
Is that like 1 per game?
Yeah.
You're right, Adam, that we've seen it so much before that Tess's death at the end of the episode did not have the effect I think that it was supposed to have. I saw, again, online, just going back to some chatter online, a lot of people were like, oh, God, it was so heart-wrenching. You know, it's just like the game. Tess, or is better than the game, whatever. Tess is such a great character. And, yes, because Anna Torv is awesome, but I didn't have an emotional impact on me.
I'm totally reaching in the dark here, but in the post-show director's comments that HBO puts together, he mentions that Tess wasn't as big of a character in the game. I may be misremembering this, and I haven't played the game, so if anybody's listening and has, I'm sure you'll be furious with me, but that they fleshed her out a bit more in this. So I guess we're still early days for the game, that we're still with characters that don't last all that long. And it did feel, Blaine, I think what you said about people praising the fact that it was video gamey, I know y'all talked about this last week, but is that a compliment? I'm not sure that it is.
Yeah, that's my thing. It's the same argument people make when they watch a Marvel movie and they come along and say, well, it's not like that in the comic, or it is like that. Like, that's not that important to me at all. And I used to be a really big comic fan, and that doesn't do much for me. A movie should be a movie, and a comic should be a comic, and a TV show should be you get the idea.
The motivating things as they're going, say, through the city, trying to make it through Boston, we can't go this way, we have to try that other way. It's like, yeah, we've all played video games, like the propulsion of the, and I guess they can't get around that. There are things that are supposed to happen in certain places according to the story. If you've played modern video games, this all feels very familiar.
It is kind of interesting how, at least in my opinion, and I might guess in y'all's, that a movie feeling like a video game is bad, but a video game that feels like a movie or is influenced by movies is usually pretty good. I'm thinking of specifically like Red Dead
We're right
Redemption.
back to, does this band jam or are they a jam band?
Yep.
We're right back.
I don't know. It's kind of funny how that, like, movies influencing video games has probably been good for video games.
Yeah. Yes.
But video games influence movies is probably bad for movies.
Not a
Well, it's
fan.
almost like the movies can elevate the art form of a video game, and the video game probably pulls down the art form of at least in how they're translated to one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And I've heard so many people say that they like this show because they enjoy even just watching other people play video games, which is like a whole...
Yes. Yeah. No, that's a thing.
I mean, I had a conversation with Spencer. I know Natalie says the same thing.
Natalie mentioned it last week.
Spencer, one of the better bass players in the Shoals, he plays with Speckled Bird. He said, "Yeah, I watched somebody
And also
play."
a Duncan. Let's mention that.
Yeah, he is a Duncan. He mentioned watching somebody play The Last of Us games, and just being totally enthralled and disturbed by them. But I mean, I know folks even younger than us, like watching a watch through is a thing.
Yeah.
That it's
Go
part
to
of
YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very strange to me.
I do want to have a very short conversation about the zombies, the monsters. We'll call them monsters. I think they may have clickers. Is that their?
The clickers.
Thank you.
I was hoping we'd bring them up.
Yeah, this is kind of a complex thing, and they're gonna run into some trouble with this, right? Because if you step on some fungus that's attached to them and their herd of or relatives or whatever has been spawned off the same, it awakens the whole bunch of them. That's got to be problematic. Obviously, it's problematic as a character in the show, but it's going to be problematic down the road because how are you not going to do that a lot?
Presumably, or at least it seemed like they were setting it up in the episode, like some clickers had these like big extended networks and some were more like lone wolves.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like the fungus was like you have to avoid the monster because it seemed like the fungus was growing out of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that may save themselves. They may save themselves.
Another thing the director talked about in that post-episode thing was that airborne spores play a part in the video game, and they couldn't figure out a way to make that translate into film without it seeming completely ridiculous, right? Because you can accept that reality in a game, and it can be visualized in a way. They had to change the rules of the universe a little bit for the sake of television. So I don't know where the stepping on thing factors in there.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to think that that's almost too dangerous for your characters. It's just going to cause multiple problems that would be impossible to overcome. The believability factor plays a role there, I guess. So next week, and a lot of our listeners probably have watched episode 3, are we hoping for basically Ron Swanson, but in a zombie apocalypse?
So Ron's dreams have come true.
He would thrive.
Yeah. He should offer some variation. And I think there's another character that's supposed to be introduced whom I know almost nothing about other than what the guy looked like in the trailer, that's supposed to offer promise.
Yeah.
Exciting, I guess.
I think Offerman can do more than just Ron Swanson, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I was joking.
Oh, I wasn't sure how serious you were.
Yeah. Yes. No, he's great. Watch him in the Hulu series we covered.
Yeah, Devs.
Devs, and he was also in Pam and Tommy. I don't recommend that show, but he was different in it for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you guys, Adam mentioned it earlier, it's a thrill to watch. It's still good, and it's a quick watch, it seems like, although it's, still your 50-minute show.
I thought this week, just from the fun to watch stuff, the prosthetics and the way the monster was really introduced this week was very fun and exciting, and like it looked cool. They were real. A lot of them were real, practical makeup effects and stuff. Not a lot of CGI. And like that part, maybe you can't think about it too much, but as like an adrenaline hit, it's kind of fun.
Exactly. Yeah, it is, and it's a boon to the show that they don't rely on a lot of CGI, other than the background, big city stuff. I'm interested to hear from Natalie and see if she's still on board with the show. She was only going to give it a few more episodes.
She said mid-watch this week, she said, I'm not sure this show is for me. She's a very jumpy viewer, so
Oh,
any of the jump scare stuff is, not that there's a ton, but it's a tense watch. She doesn't need that in her life,
maybe Ron Swanson will bring her solace.
Once the enemy turns from the clickers into fellow man, she'll be back on board.
Yeah, that's
It's
definitely
much
going to
better
happen.
that way.
Definitely teased in that opening episode where they talk about scavengers or those types of people out in the land. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
for
and
sure.
something the director said was in the original game, they're being chased by, what is it, Fedra?
Yeah.
Right.
Army.
Yeah.
It's not clickers pursuing them through Boston, right? It's the army.
I think that was my understanding. So I assume that's going to come back to play a big part pretty soon.
Definitely holds promise to be more interesting when you have people who are scavenging out in the apocalypse and needing what you have. That's a better tale, mostly. I think that's what we got for you people. We appreciate you listening. That's the end of our show. We'll continue the conversation online via Instagram and Twitter by finding Taking It Down Pod, one word. And then the whole podcast network's at the Alabama Take. You can keep up with new releases and new writings by following the Alabama Take almost anywhere online. Thanks to our guys. We'll see everybody later.